7 days alone in a ghost town. No food, no water, just a promise to wait. They said he'd be back in 2 days, but loyalty doesn't count days. This dog never stopped believing. The ghost town of Silver Falls sat abandoned in Arizona Territory in 1879. Once it had been a thriving silver mining town with thousands, but when the silver ran out 5 years ago, everyone left. Now only empty buildings remained standing against the desert wind. Wooden storefronts with broken windows lined the dusty main street. The old saloon sign creaked in the wind constantly, day and night. Tumbleweeds rolled through town like ghosts of the past constantly. Only one person still lived in Silver Falls now, these days. Widow Martha was an elderly woman who refused to leave. She had lived here for 30 years and wouldn't abandon home. She survived by keeping a small garden and collecting rainwater carefully. She fed the occasional stray animals that wandered through town. Martha was content with her quiet, solitary life here, peacefully. But everything was about to change when a prospector arrived. A prospector and his loyal dog would bring life back. Henry was a prospector who had been searching for silver for years. He had heard rumors about Silver Falls and its abandoned mines. Maybe everyone had missed something valuable when they left so quickly. Maybe there was still silver hidden in those dark tunnels. Henry rode into Silver Falls on a hot afternoon in June. His Australian Shepherd mix, Scout, trotted beside the horse faithfully. Scout had been with Henry for 5 years, through everything. They had traveled across 3 territories together, searching for fortune. Scout was more than a dog to Henry, completely and deeply. He was family, companion, and best friend all in one. Scout had one blue eye and one brown eye that sparkled. His blue merle coat was dusty from travel, but still beautiful. Scout's tail wagged as they entered the empty ghost town. The dog was always optimistic and happy, no matter where they went. Henry smiled, watching Scout explore the abandoned street with curiosity and excitement. Widow Martha appeared on her porch as they rode past slowly. "Welcome to Silver Falls," she called out in a friendly voice. Henry tipped his hat politely to the elderly woman, respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm Henry, and this is Scout." Scout's tail wagged, hearing his name mentioned by Henry proudly. Martha smiled warmly at the beautiful dog before her eyes. "What a handsome boy," she said while approaching them carefully. Scout immediately went to Martha with his friendly nature showing. He let her pet his head while his tail wagged faster. "He's friendly," Henry said with obvious pride in his voice. "Scout loves everyone he meets, without exception or hesitation." Martha scratched Scout's ears gently, and the dog leaned into her. "You're planning to work the mines?" she asked Henry directly. Henry nodded while dismounting his tired horse carefully and slowly. "I heard there might be silver still in those tunnels." Martha's face showed concern at his words immediately and clearly. "Those mines are dangerous," she warned him seriously and firmly. "They've been abandoned for 5 years without any maintenance work. The supports are rotting and tunnels could collapse easily now." But Henry had searched for silver too long to stop. "I'll be careful, ma'am," he promised her sincerely and honestly. "I just need a few days to check the old claims." Martha sighed, knowing she couldn't stop a determined prospector's dream. "You can stay in the old boarding house," she offered kindly. "It's still standing and has a good roof over it." Henry thanked her and led his horse toward the boarding house. Scout followed happily, sniffing everything with great interest and natural curiosity. The ghost town was full of new smells and adventures. For the next 2 days, Henry explored the abandoned silver mines. Scout always waited outside the mine entrance for him patiently and loyally. The dog refused to go inside the dark tunnels ever. He would sit and watch until Henry emerged again safely. On the third day, Henry found something promising deep underground, a small vein of silver that everyone had somehow missed. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something valuable worth pursuing. Henry needed proper equipment to extract the silver ore carefully. The nearest town with a mining supply store was 2 days away. Henry decided he would ride there and return within 4 days. That morning, Henry knelt down beside Scout in front of the boarding house. "I need you to stay here, boy," he said gently. Scout tilted his head with confusion at those words spoken clearly. Henry had never left him behind before in 5 years together. "I'll be back in 4 days, maximum," Henry explained while stroking Scout's head. "I promise I'll come back for you, Scout. You have to trust me." Scout's tail wagged uncertainly at this unusual request from Henry. "Stay," Henry commanded firmly while pointing at the boarding house porch. Scout sat down obediently, even though he didn't understand why completely. Henry asked Martha to watch Scout while he was gone away. Martha agreed and promised to feed Scout daily without fail. "Don't worry," she assured Henry warmly and sincerely. "Scout will be fine here with me for a few days." Henry mounted his horse with a heavy heart that morning. Scout watched with his mismatched eyes showing confusion and worry now. "Stay, Scout," Henry repeated one more time firmly before leaving. "I'll be back. I promise you that faithfully." Henry rode out of Silver Falls, heading east toward civilization. Scout sat on the porch watching Henry disappear into the distance. The dog's ears drooped slightly with sadness at being left. But Scout trusted Henry completely and without any doubt whatsoever. If Henry said he would return, then he would return. Scout would wait right here on this porch, patiently and faithfully. Martha brought Scout food and water that evening, as promised, but Scout barely touched the food offered to him gently. He just kept watching the road where Henry had disappeared. Day 1 passed slowly for Scout, waiting on the porch constantly. He sat in the same spot, watching the eastern road. Every movement in the distance made Scout's ears perk up, but it was always just tumbleweeds or dust devils passing. Martha tried to coax Scout inside the boarding house that night. "Come inside, boy," she said gently and encouragingly. "It's getting cold out here tonight." But Scout refused to move from his waiting spot chosen. He would stay right here where Henry had left him. Martha brought a blanket and placed it around Scout carefully. "Stubborn, loyal thing," she muttered with affection and admiration both. Day 2 arrived with the burning desert sun overhead blazing. Scout remained on the porch in the same exact spot. Martha brought water and fresh food for the waiting dog. Scout drank some water but still wouldn't eat much food. His eyes never left that eastern road for long periods. But what Scout didn't know yet was this terrible truth. Henry had been caught in a flash flood 50 miles away. His horse had panicked and thrown him against rocks hard. Henry lay unconscious with a broken leg in a canyon. A passing wagon train found him 2 days later finally. They took him to the nearest town for medical treatment. Henry was delirious with fever from infection spreading through his leg. He kept asking about Scout and Silver Falls desperately and constantly. But in his condition, he couldn't travel anywhere at all. The doctor said Henry needed at least 2 weeks of rest, 2 weeks before he could ride again safely without dying. And Scout sat waiting in Silver Falls completely unaware of this, waiting for a man who couldn't come back yet despite wanting to. The question wasn't if Henry would return eventually to Silver Falls. The question was whether Scout would still be waiting when he did. Day 3 arrived, and Scout remained on the porch faithfully waiting. Martha brought him breakfast, but Scout barely sniffed the food offered. His focus was entirely on that eastern road ahead, constantly. "You need to eat, boy," Martha said with growing concern. But Scout's loyalty was stronger than his hunger right now. He would wait for Henry, no matter what it took. The sun beat down mercilessly on the ghost town all day. Scout panted in the heat, but refused to move inside. Martha brought water every few hours to keep Scout hydrated properly. She sat beside him on the porch, talking gently to him. "Henry will come back," she assured the worried dog kindly. "He promised you, and he seems like a good man." Scout's mismatched eyes looked at her briefly before returning to the road. Day 4 came, and this was when Henry was supposed to return. Scout's whole body was tense with anticipation and hope building. Every sound made his ears stand up, alert and listening carefully.
But the sun set on day 4 without Henry appearing. Scout's ears drooped slightly with disappointment and confusion growing. Martha saw the sadness in Scout's expressive face clearly now. "Something must have delayed him," she said soothingly to Scout. "He'll come tomorrow, I'm sure of it completely." But tomorrow became day 5, and still no Henry appeared. Scout was now visibly thinner from barely eating anything substantial. His beautiful blue merle coat was dusty and unkempt now, but still he sat in that same spot, waiting. Martha tried everything to get Scout to eat more food. She cooked meat and brought it fresh and warm. She offered jerky and bread, and even her own stew. Scout would take a few bites to please her only. Then his eyes would return to watching the road ahead. Martha's heart broke watching this loyal dog suffer in silence. "Where is that man?" she muttered with frustration and worry. Day 6 arrived, and Scout was visibly weak now from exhaustion. He had barely slept, always keeping watch on the road. His eyes were tired but still alert and watching faithfully. Martha sat beside Scout that morning with tears in her eyes. "Please eat something, boy," she begged him desperately and emotionally. "You're going to die out here if you don't eat." Scout looked at her with those beautiful mismatched eyes sadly, but he wouldn't abandon his post no matter the cost. Henry had said to stay and wait here on this porch, so Scout would stay and wait until Henry returned finally. Martha decided to try something different to help Scout survive. She went to her small garden and picked fresh vegetables. She cooked them with pieces of chicken into a rich soup. The smell was strong and delicious, wafting through the air. Scout's nose twitched at the wonderful smell reaching him. Martha brought the bowl and sat it right in front of Scout. "Please, Scout," Martha said with tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Just a little bit for me, for your strength left." Scout looked at the food, then at Martha's tearful face. Something in her distress moved him slightly and gently. He leaned down and took a few bites of the soup. It was delicious, and his empty stomach welcomed it gratefully. Martha smiled through her tears as Scout ate more slowly. "Good boy," she encouraged him warmly and proudly. "That's a good boy, Scout." Scout finished half the bowl before stopping to watch the road. But it was progress, and Martha felt hopeful about it. She would keep him alive until Henry returned somehow, with determination. Day 7 arrived, and Scout had been waiting a full week. The ghost town was silent, except for the wind's constant howling. Scout sat on that porch, looking thinner, but still determined. His coat was dull, and his eyes showed exhaustion clearly. But something else showed in Scout's eyes, too, that was remarkable. An unshakable faith and loyalty that wouldn't die or fade. Scout believed Henry would come back without any doubt remaining. It didn't matter how long it took at all anymore. Scout would wait here forever if that's what it required. Martha sat beside Scout that morning, quietly and thoughtfully. "You're the most loyal creature I've ever seen," she said. "Henry is lucky to have you in his life." Scout's tail thumped once weakly in acknowledgement of her words. Around noon, something happened that changed everything, completely and suddenly. Scout's ears suddenly perked up sharply and alert instantly. He stood up for the first time in days, quickly. Martha looked toward the eastern road with hope, building fast. "Do you see something, boy?" she asked excitedly and nervously. Scout's tail began wagging faster and faster with building excitement. A figure appeared in the distance, riding slowly toward town. Scout's entire body began trembling with anticipation and overwhelming emotion. Was it Henry, finally returning after 7 days waiting? Or was it just another traveler passing through the area? Scout stood at the edge of the porch, straining to see. The figure came closer and closer through the shimmering heat. Scout suddenly barked loudly for the first time in 7 days. It was a bark of recognition and pure joy bursting forth. Martha squinted into the distance, trying to see clearly now. "Is that him?" she asked Scout, with hope in voice. Scout didn't wait for confirmation or permission from anyone now. He leaped off the porch and ran toward the approaching figure. His weak legs carried him as fast as they could. 7 days of waiting were about to end, finally and completely. Scout ran down the dusty main street, barking with joy. The figure on horseback came into clearer view now, finally. It was Henry, riding slowly with his leg bandaged heavily. Henry saw Scout running toward him, and his face lit up. "Scout!" he shouted with emotion, choking his voice completely. Scout reached Henry and jumped up, trying to reach him desperately. Henry dismounted carefully, favoring his injured leg obviously and painfully. He dropped to his knees, and Scout crashed into him. The dog licked Henry's face frantically with overwhelming happiness and relief. Henry hugged Scout tightly, with tears streaming down his weathered face. "I'm so sorry, boy," Henry sobbed into Scout's fur. "I tried to get back sooner. I really tried." Scout whined and pressed closer to Henry with complete forgiveness. He didn't care about the delay or the waiting time. Henry had come back just like he promised he would. Martha walked up to them with her own tears flowing freely. 7 days? She said with amazement in her shaking voice. He waited right on that porch for 7 full days. Henry looked up at Martha with gratitude and disbelief. 7 days? He repeated while hugging Scout tighter than before. You waited 7 days for me, boy? Scout's tail wagged so hard his whole body shook happily. Henry buried his face in Scout's dusty fur and cried. He had never felt such unconditional love and loyalty before. Martha helped Henry stand up slowly and carefully with support. "Come inside," she said gently to both of them. "You both need food and rest desperately now." Henry limped toward the boarding house with Scout pressed against him. Scout wouldn't leave Henry's side for even a moment now. They had been apart too long already in Scout's mind. Henry sat down on the porch steps heavily and painfully. Martha brought food and water for both Henry and Scout immediately. Scout ate ravenously now that Henry was back with him. Henry watched Scout eat with tears still in his eyes. "I broke my leg," Henry explained to Martha while Scout ate. "Flash flood caught me 50 miles east of here unexpectedly." Martha nodded with understanding and sympathy showing clearly in her expression. "The important thing is you're both together again now," she said. Henry reached down and stroked Scout's dusty blue merle coat gently. "I was delirious with fever for days," he continued emotionally. "All I could think about was getting back to Scout." Scout finished eating and immediately climbed onto Henry's lap carefully. The dog was too big to fit comfortably, but he tried. Henry laughed through his tears at Scout's determination to be close. "I missed you too, boy," he said while hugging Scout. "I missed you so much it hurt inside." Scout licked Henry's face again with pure love and devotion. That night, Henry and Scout slept inside the boarding house together. Scout refused to leave Henry's side even for a moment now. He lay pressed against Henry on the bed, protectively and closely. Henry stroked Scout's head throughout the night, unable to sleep much. "You're the best friend I've ever had," Henry whispered. Scout's tail thumped against the bed in response to those words. "Most people would have given up after 3 or 4 days," Henry said. "But not you. You never stopped believing I'd come back." Scout looked up at Henry with those mismatched eyes full of trust. Henry realized something profound in that moment of clarity and emotion. The silver didn't matter anymore at all to him now. The fortune he'd been chasing for years seemed meaningless suddenly. What mattered was right here beside him, on this bed. Loyalty, love, and trust that couldn't be bought with any silver. "We're going home, Scout," Henry decided out loud then.
The next morning, Henry told Martha about his decision made overnight. "I'm done prospecting," he announced while packing his few belongings. Martha smiled with approval and understanding at his wise choice. "What will you do?" she asked with genuine curiosity and interest. Henry looked at Scout, sitting faithfully beside him as always now. "I'm gonna buy a small ranch," he said with certainty. "Somewhere Scout and I can live peacefully together without searching." Martha nodded approvingly at this good plan for both of them. "That dog earned a peaceful life," she said while petting Scout. "He showed loyalty that most humans can't match or understand." Henry agreed completely with her assessment of Scout's character and devotion. Before leaving Silver Falls, Henry did something meaningful and important. He went to the mine where he'd found that small vein. He carefully collapsed the entrance with rocks and timber permanently. "No more chasing silver," Henry said to Scout, watching nearby. "That life almost cost me you, and that's not worth it." Scout's tail wagged in approval of this decision being made. Henry and Martha said their goodbyes at the edge of town. "Thank you for taking care of Scout," Henry said gratefully. "You saved his life by keeping him fed and watered." Martha hugged Henry gently, careful of his injured leg still healing. "He saved himself," she corrected Henry kindly and honestly. "That loyalty came from his heart, not from my food." She knelt down and hugged Scout tightly with obvious affection. "You're a special dog," she told Scout while scratching his ears. "Don't ever change who you are inside, boy." Scout licked her wrinkled face, making her laugh with delight. Henry mounted his horse carefully, with his bandaged leg awkward. Scout walked beside the horse as they left Silver Falls. The ghost town faded behind them into the distance slowly. They traveled for 3 weeks, heading north toward Montana territory, carefully. Henry's leg healed slowly during the journey, with Scout's constant companionship. They camped under stars and talked by firelight every night together. Well, Henry talked and Scout listened with those attentive, mismatched eyes. Henry told Scout about the ranch he would buy for him. "A small place with good grass and water," he described happily. "Maybe some chickens and a few cattle to keep us busy." Scout's tail wagged at every word Henry spoke with enthusiasm. "And a big porch where you can sit and watch everything," Henry added. Scout barked once in approval of that particular feature mentioned. They finally reached a small town called Willow Creek in Montana. Henry found a modest ranch for sale just outside town. 20 acres with a creek, a small house, and a barn. It was perfect for their needs and Henry's remaining savings. Henry bought the ranch and they moved in that same week. Scout explored every inch of the property with joy and excitement. He ran through the grass, splashed in the creek water happily. For the first time in years, Scout had a real home.
Henry built a large, covered porch on the front of the house. He put a comfortable dog bed there for Scout to use. "This is your spot, boy," Henry said while showing Scout proudly. Scout circled 3 times and lay down on the bed perfectly. From this porch, Scout could see the entire valley below them. He could watch the sunrise every morning and sunset every evening. Henry sat in a rocking chair beside Scout's bed that evening. The sun was setting over the Montana mountains, beautifully and peacefully. "We made it, Scout," Henry said with deep contentment and satisfaction. "We finally made it to somewhere we can call home." Scout's tail thumped against his bed in complete agreement with everything. Henry thought back to those 7 days Scout had waited for him. 7 days of unwavering faith and loyalty beyond measure or understanding. "You never gave up on me," Henry said with emotion, "even when you had every reason to leave and survive." Scout looked up at Henry with those beautiful, mismatched eyes, peacefully. Henry reached down and stroked Scout's head gently and lovingly. "I promise you something right now, Scout," he said seriously. "I will never leave you waiting again as long as I live." Scout's tail wagged faster at this solemn promise being made. They sat together on that porch as darkness fell over the ranch. 2 souls who had found each other and refused to let go. Scout had waited 7 days in a ghost town without giving up. He had believed when others would have lost faith completely, and that loyalty had earned him a home and a life. Not just survival, but a real life filled with love and peace. Henry had learned that the greatest treasure wasn't silver underground somewhere. It was the loyal friend sitting beside him on this porch. The friend who would wait forever if asked to wait. The friend who never stopped believing in promises made between them. As stars appeared in the Montana sky above them both, Scout closed his eyes peacefully. He was home. Finally and forever, he was truly home at last. And he would never have to wait alone again in his entire life. The ghost town was behind them, just a memory of testing times. But the loyalty Scout had shown there would never be forgotten. It would be remembered forever in Henry's grateful heart always. Scout had never given up, and because of that unwavering faith and devotion, they both had found their peace at last, together, finally.